Get out if all you're gonna do is sleep. You're just in the way, a useless wife. The cruel words cut through the silence, and I winced. It was my mother-in-law again, standing over me with that familiar look of disdain. Ever since I was diagnosed with cancer, I've been so tired, needing to rest often. But she saw my fatigue as laziness and never missed a chance to berate me. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, my husband, Jackson, who was supposed to be on a business trip overseas, suddenly walked in with someone by his side. The sight of him brought me both relief and confusion. What was he doing here? My name is Sophia, and I'm a 32-year-old housewife. I've been married to Jackson for 6 years. We met while working in different departments of the same company. Our lives had been simple but joyful, especially after the birth of our daughter, Emma, who is now 5 years old. After Emma was born, I switched to a part-time job in the mornings, which allowed me to be there for her when she finished kindergarten. We would have dinner together as a family and occasionally go out for fun. I thought our happy little life would last forever. But about a year ago, everything changed. It started when I found out I was pregnant with our second child. But soon after, I noticed something unusual in my breast. After getting it checked, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. The worst news was that it was in an advanced stage, stage 4, locally advanced breast cancer. My world collapsed. My mother had died from the same type of cancer, and I had always been diligent about getting annual checkups. But that year, with work and caring for Emma, I had postponed my hospital visit. I couldn't help but think, if I had gone earlier, would the outcome have been different? The doctor's words haunted me. The cancer cells had likely spread beyond my breast. My fear was overwhelming. The doctor explained that I had to choose between starting treatment immediately or continuing the pregnancy. I couldn't believe what was happening. I needed to discuss this with Jackson. That night, on the bus ride home, I tried to hold back my tears, but the weight of it all was crushing. When I got home and put Emma to bed, Jackson and I sat down to talk. I had already told him some of the news through WhatsApp, but saying it out loud made it painfully real. We both broke down in tears. I wanted to keep the baby, but Jackson insisted we should prioritize my health. "I can't bear the thought of losing you," he said, his voice shaking. I understood his feelings, but I couldn't make a decision right away. However, before I could decide, I miscarried. I was devastated, apologizing endlessly to the child I would never get to hold. Further tests showed that I might not be able to conceive again. While my father and father-in-law were supportive and comforting, my mother-in-law's words were like daggers. "Can't even produce an heir. Truly useless," she said coldly when we were alone. Despite everything, I was determined to fight the cancer and live a happy life with Jackson and Emma. I started chemotherapy, hoping to shrink the tumor enough to have it removed surgically. I had to quit my job to focus on treatment. It was hard on Emma, who was only 4 at the time. "No, Mom, don't go," she cried as I left for the hospital. Her tears broke my heart. I felt so guilty making her go through this. During my treatment, my mother-in-law took care of Emma after kindergarten, which I hated. Once, after scolding Emma, she said, "It's okay if Mommy doesn't get better, right?" The words echoed in my mind, making me angry and hurt. Emma was just a child. There was no need to be so harsh. I had never gotten along with my mother-in-law. Even from the beginning of our marriage, she was difficult, harsh, critical, and unkind. During family meetings, she would question everyone, especially me, scrutinizing my education and family background. When she learned that my mother had battled breast cancer, she said, "Doesn't that mean Sophia has a high chance of getting it too? Maybe you shouldn't get married." Jackson and my father-in-law had scolded her for that, but she never missed a chance to make snide remarks when they weren't around. She always wanted Jackson to marry Olivia, a childhood friend of his who was a violinist and a graduate of a prestigious music school. My mother-in-law adored Olivia, who was currently studying abroad. I had never met her, but my mother-in-law never stopped comparing me to her. Jackson reassured me that Olivia was just an old friend, but that didn't stop my mother-in-law from constantly bringing her up. With me hospitalized, Jackson struggled to manage everything on his own, so we had no choice but to rely on my mother-in-law. Despite my dislike for her, she did take care of Emma when I couldn't, which I was grateful for, even if she wasn't always kind. Still, her presence added to the strain I was already feeling. Chemotherapy was grueling. The tumor caused pain, emitted a foul odor, and even made my clothes damp. It was summer, and the heat made the smell worse. I felt awful, thinking I was causing discomfort to everyone around me. My only solace during this time was the messages and video calls from Jackson and Emma. Emma's sweet voice telling me to hang in there gave me the strength to endure the painful treatment. After months of chemotherapy, the tumor had shrunk enough to be surgically removed. The surgery was scheduled for the end of summer, and I was finally discharged from the hospital. The doctor warned that I would need regular checkups and that it would be challenging to achieve a complete cure, but I was just happy to be going home. Jackson and Emma came to pick me up. Emma ran to me, hugging me tightly, and I held her close, overwhelmed with emotion. "Thank you, Jackson. I'm sorry for leaving you and Emma alone for so long," I said, trying to smile despite my exhaustion. "You've been through so much," Jackson replied, his voice filled with love. A few days later, we visited my in-laws' house for a post-discharge celebration. I thanked my father-in-law and mother-in-law for their support. While my father-in-law responded warmly, my mother-in-law remained distant. When I tried to help with dinner, she surprisingly told me to sit down and rest, probably because Jackson and my father-in-law were there. That night, we stayed over at their house. After putting Emma to bed, I took my painkillers and another medicine to reduce the odor from the tumor. I changed my bandages and took a warm shower to ease the pain. As I was about to put my used towel in the washing machine, my mother-in-law burst in. "What's that awful smell?" "Don't put your towel in our machine. It'll make everything stink," she exclaimed, pinching her nose in exaggerated disgust. Then she stared at my chest, where the surgery had left scars, and laughed cruelly. "What's with that chest? It looks disgusting." Her words stung, but I was too tired to respond. I ignored her, knowing it was pointless to argue. My monthly checkups continued, but my condition wasn't improving much. Jackson always took time off work to come with me, taking notes on everything the doctor said. His dedication filled me with gratitude, even as my mother-in-law's comments continued to hurt. Eventually, I decided to undergo another surgery to remove the remaining cancer cells. It wasn't a cure, but it would improve my quality of life. After the surgery, the odor began to fade, and I started to feel a bit stronger. On good days, I enjoyed taking walks with Emma or baking together, but many days I was still too fatigued to do much. Jackson, without a word of complaint, took on the household chores. Even after a long day at work, he cared for Emma and me with unwavering patience. "I'm sorry, Jackson," I often said, feeling guilty for all the extra work I was putting on him. "You have nothing to apologize for, Sophia. Just rest and get better soon," he would always reply, his kindness bringing tears to my eyes. Jackson had always been like this, even before we got married. He was there for me when my mother passed away from cancer shortly after our wedding. She was given only 6 months to live, but managed to stay with us longer, overjoyed that I had found happiness with Jackson. I often thought of my mother, wishing she could have met her granddaughter, Emma. I longed for a future where I could watch Emma grow up and maybe even hold her children someday. All I could do was focus on my treatments and hope for more time. Then, one day, Jackson told me he had to go on a week-long business trip. "I'm really sorry, Sophia, but could you stay at my parents' house for just a week?" he asked, knowing how difficult it would be for me to be around his mother. The thought of spending a week with my mother-in-law was daunting, but I reluctantly agreed. When we arrived at my in-laws' house, my father-in-law was welcoming, but my mother-in-law was as cold as ever. A few days after Jackson left for China, I felt an overwhelming sense of fatigue after dropping Emma off at kindergarten. I decided to lie down, hoping to rest. But before I could fall asleep, my mother-in-law stormed into the room. "Get up! How long are you going to sleep? You're such a burden," she shouted, her voice sharp and filled with contempt. "You've been discharged, so start working. You neglect Emma and make Jackson do all the housework. I feel sorry for him." Her words cut deep. I already felt guilty for not being able to do more for my family. My body was weak, and despite being discharged, I wasn't fully recovered. Tears welled up in my eyes as she continued to berate me. "You rushed into marriage just to make your mother happy, and now look at you. Useless and unable to have more children. But don't worry, even without you, I'll make sure Jackson and Emma get a proper mom. Olivia is back from abroad. Isrania, so just divorce Jackson gracefully," she said, her voice cold and calculated. My heart raced. What was she talking about? Jackson had his own life, and it wasn't for her to control. "You're cruel," I managed to say, my voice trembling. "You have no right to say these things." Just as I spoke, the door opened and Emma ran in, tears streaming down her face. "Grandma, I hate you! Why are you so mean to Mom?" she cried, hugging me tightly. I was shocked to see her. It was already past 3 p.m., and she should have been at kindergarten. At that moment, Jackson walked in, followed by an unfamiliar woman. Mother-in-law looked shocked. "Jackson, why are you here? And who is this?" she asked, her voice suddenly unsure. "I got a call from Sophia this morning saying she wasn't feeling well, so I came back," Jackson replied, his voice tense. "Then I got a call from the kindergarten saying no one picked up Emma. What's going on, Mom?" The woman with Jackson spoke up. "I'm Olivia," she said quietly. "Your mother-in-law asked me to come over. Today was supposed to be Emma's first violin lesson." I was too feverish and confused to process everything, and before I knew it, I passed out. When I woke up, a serious discussion was taking place in the living room. Jackson, my father-in-law, and even Olivia were there, all looking grim. Emma had been taken to the park, and the adults were gathered to get to the bottom of things. "Mom, what's going on? Why was Olivia here?" "Explain yourself," Jackson demanded, his voice cold and controlled. Mother-in-law shifted nervously under his stern gaze. She began to tell her story, looking frightened. While I was in the hospital for chemotherapy, she had unexpectedly run into Olivia, who had returned from abroad after a hand injury ended her violinist career. Now, after surgery, Olivia was teaching violin. "I thought she could teach Emma the violin," mother-in-law said, trying to sound innocent. "And maybe she could, be a good mother to Emma in the future." Jackson was furious. "What are you talking about? We've been just friends since childhood. It's ridiculous to suggest anything more, especially with Sophia here." "But I just want you to be happy," mother-in-law insisted. "Sophia's diagnosis is terminal. When she's gone, you'll be left to raise Emma alone. Olivia has always liked you, and she adores Emma. I thought it would be a good start with violin lessons." "Are you kidding me?" Jackson shouted. "What do you think you're doing with our lives? I'm happy with Sophia and Emma. Why can't you understand that? Don't drag Olivia into your crazy plans." As Jackson spoke, he held up several funeral home brochures. "And what's this?" he demanded. "You've been planning Sophia's funeral? How could you be so cruel?" Mother-in-law tried to explain, but it was clear she had gone too far. The realization that she despised me so much was terrifying. My father-in-law, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. "I can't stand this anymore. This is the end for us," he said firmly, leaving my mother-in-law speechless. Later, Olivia explained everything. Mother-in-law had been trying to set her up with Jackson, painting me as a terrible mother who neglected Emma. But after spending time with Emma, Olivia realized that the image she had been given of me was far from the truth. "Mrs. Sophia, I admire you," Olivia said, her voice sincere. "You've endured so much with your illness, and still managed to be a wonderful mother to Emma. I'm sorry for what happened today. I won't see your mother-in-law again. Emma's only mother is you." I was touched by Olivia's words. She was nothing like I had imagined. She was dignified, kind, and strong. A woman who had faced her own challenges and emerged with grace. As we prepared to leave my in-laws' house, Jackson turned to his mother. "We're leaving now, and we won't see you again, Mom," he said firmly. Mother-in-law looked shocked. "Why? How could you leave me?" she cried, unable to comprehend the consequences of her actions. Jackson didn't waver. "You've done enough damage. Goodbye," he said, and we left without looking back. After we left, we heard that my father-in-law and mother-in-law did get divorced. Mother-in-law quickly signed the papers and moved back to her parents' house, but she was soon kicked out. We heard through acquaintances that she had been spending excessively, mostly on supporting stage actors, and my father-in-law had reached his limit. Rumors of my mother-in-law's cruel words to me and her attempts to marry Olivia to Jackson spread, and many people distanced themselves from her. She was evicted from her parents' house and now lives in a small apartment, working part-time jobs. Having never worked before, and being so proud, this must be humiliating for her, but it's her own doing. Jackson isn't an object for her to control. He has his own life, and his happiness isn't something she gets to decide. If she had understood that, none of this would have happened. Years later, I stood with Jackson and Emma at my mother's grave. Emma, now in elementary school, prayed beside us. Despite the odds, I had survived 5 years after my diagnosis. The cancer had spread to my bones, but I wasn't afraid. I was determined to live as long as I could with my beloved family. "Mom, look," I whispered. "Emma's grown so much." My voice was filled with emotion as I thought about the future. I would continue to fight, holding on to the dream that my mother couldn't fulfill, to one day hold my grandchildren in my arms.